In the depths of the ocean, Lu Sheng stood up and with a confused gaze, began to look around, searching for where that mysterious voice was coming from. While his eyes were shining with curiosity and martial energy was emerging from his body, Lu Sheng began to gaze to one side and couldn't help but sweat, since he didn't know to whom that voice belonged nor who was calling him to go to the world of dreams. With a serious gaze, Lu Sheng began to look at the ground in silence. He knew there was no one nearby, yet someone was still calling him to go to the world of dreams. He didn't know if his ability to enter the world of dreams came from that. Lu Sheng closed his eyes and decided it was better to concentrate. They had shared much time together, and he knew that person didn't want to harm him, so he decided to enter the world of dreams and take a look. Once Lu Sheng opened his eyes, his mind was filled with surprise, since he was in a completely different place from the world of dreams. Lu Sheng began to contemplate this strange place in silence, not knowing what was happening. Lu Sheng's eyes widened with fear and confusion, since he did not know what this place was, nor if it was the base of the world of dreams. He could not help but wonder where the ruined future was. Now he found himself in the middle of the universe. Upon observing carefully, Lu Sheng saw a golden-colored planet in the distance. His gaze fixed on it, his eyes filled with curiosity since he did not know what that was. Lu Sheng began to observe the planet in silence, and with a gaze full of determination decided to go take a look. Using his power, Lu Sheng began to advance toward the planet, and as he approached, he noticed that it was a small asteroid, which resembled the Little Prince's planet. A few hours later, Lu Sheng entered the planet and landed softly on the ground. It was night, and in front of our boy there was a house, his gaze fixed on it. And thinking calmly, he realized that this was the Little Prince's house. The house's courtyard was full of flowers, and without wasting any more time, Lu Sheng approached the house and opened the courtyard door. With a curious expression, Lu Sheng began to observe the flowers, and it didn't take long for him to realize that this seemed like a traditional Chinese-style courtyard. Just then, our boy's eyes started to shine seriously as something caught his attention. In front of our boy were three men sitting around a table playing checkers. One of them wore gardener's clothes, another had orange hair, and another man had long hair. Lu Sheng began to observe the man in silence, not knowing what was happening. Lu Sheng's eyes began to shine with confusion, as he did not know how these men had appeared here in an instant, without knowing if they were the ones who allowed him to enter the world of dreams. One of the men brought his hand close to the checkers board to make his move. While his eyes were shining with joy, he turned toward our boy and with a smile asked our boy to take a seat. Upon hearing this, Lu Sheng's eyes filled with surprise and fear, his gaze fixed on the man, and he could not help but go into shock, not knowing what was happening. While our boy was synced in his thoughts, the old man used his powers, and in the blink of an eye, Lu Sheng appeared sitting next to them. While his eyes were shining with confusion, he began to observe the energy that was emerging from his body, and couldn't help but go into shock since he didn't know when he had sat down. The old man closed his eyes and began to show a smile. Lu Sheng started staring at the old man with a suspicious gaze, and although he didn't know them, the energy they radiated and the constant flow of their natural breathing method were somewhat familiar to him. The old man began looking at our boy with a serene gaze and couldn't help but smile. Upon looking closely, Lu Sheng realized that this guy was Yang Yizhuo. The long-haired man closed his eyes and a smile appeared on his face. He was Wang Yi. The man wearing gardener's clothes began showing a cheerful smile. He was Duan Yefeng with a kind smile. Duan Yefeng asked Lu Sheng to calm down since there was no need to rush. Upon hearing this, Lu Sheng began to gaze to the side and his eyes began to shine with suspicion. The gardener asked Lu Sheng to join them for a game. Lu Sheng began staring intently at the checkers board and his body began emitting a powerful martial energy. At the same time, in the vast starry sky, the blue ship was performing a jump and take off. It was traveling at the speed of light. Inside was seated the guide, having a glass of wine with a smile. Around him were system panels and right in front there was a system window. The system window began to show a recording of his battle against Lu Sheng. So the guide began to observe attentively, and thought that the Fist of the Five Realms was without a doubt an amazing technique. a martial technique also known as the art of rules. He knew that this could only mean that Lu Sheng had reached the laws that govern the universe. A smile spread across his face, since with just this alone, Lu Sheng already had the pass to enter the Academy of Celestial Battlefield. According to the guide, Lu Sheng's constitution made him even more impressive. The system began to show Lu Sheng with his fists clenched and smiling, while martial energy was emerging from his fists. The only thing the guide did not know was which kind of constitution Lu Sheng had. He took a sip of the liquid he was drinking, and could not help but smile. He remembered that in the Jupiter region there was a case where a level 9 fighter faced one of level 10. The genius who achieved such feat was named Orland. That battle catapulted him to fame, and he was finally accepted into the Celestial Academy, where later it was discovered that his level was 9. The guide began to look at the ground, and the image of Lu Sheng smiling came to his mind, with a smile. He thought that what Lu Sheng had achieved went beyond his expectations, because he had fought against a level 10 warrior being level 9. He did not know what would happen if a level 8 warrior faced one of level 10, without knowing if they would have the level of a dawn star, or perhaps the level of a bright moon. A confident smile appeared on his face, although a simple and direct estimation could not be made. The truth was that the level was not going to be something so low. It was very likely that this warrior would reach the star level of dawn. Furthermore, since Lu Sheng had already understood the arts of the 5 rules, if he did not deviate from his martial path, entering level 11 seemed almost guaranteed. The guide began to imagine the most powerful beings in the universe. He knew that Lu Sheng could even reach level 12. According to him, this was something terrifying, since there were not many level 12 characters in their stellar region. Each one of them was a legendary and terrifying existence. Not even he dared to lift his head to look at them. The guide clenched his fists, and a smile spread across his face. He couldn't help but feel happy because this time he had really made it. He began to observe the system window, and his smile grew larger. He would never have thought that this routine mission would allow him to discover such a powerful genius. And besides, Lu Sheng owed him 3 favors. Over time, those could be 3 exclusive planets. While he was immersed in his world of fantasies, the system window activated, and one of his superiors called his attention. Upon hearing this, Lan Cheng came out of his trance and panicked. With a serene gaze, Lan Cheng extended his hand and addressed his superior as Zhao Lin, explaining that he just had good news to share. Just before he could finish speaking, Zhao Lin interrupted him and decided to talk about it later since he had something urgent to ask him. He asked if on this trip Lan Cheng had come across any star pirate ships. Upon hearing this, Lan Cheng couldn't help but feel somewhat confused. With a curious gaze, he remembered that it was said there were active pirates in this region of space. While Zhao Lin's eyes were shining with fear, with a serious expression he revealed that several resource planets from the neighboring star sector had already been looted. All the major stellar resources had been extracted, and many powerful natives of the planets had already become slaves to be sold. Upon hearing this, Lan Cheng couldn't help but feel furious and curse the star pirates. He began to imagine a planet full of monsters and in chaos. The star pirates were like locusts roaming through space. Wherever they passed, they ravaged an entire planet. Not only was it a matter of resources, they also caused the collapse of defensive lines against interstellar beasts. In short, not only did they steal and flee, but left total disaster behind them. Zhao Lin began to stare at Lan Cheng, and with a furious gaze made it clear that this band of star pirates was a group of the Red Eyes, the most savage in the Umuxing sector in almost 100 years. Originally there were 12 members, 7 had been taken down or captured. Now only the Red Eye leader and 4 uncaptured subordinates remained. He began to imagine all the members of the pirates. The remaining 5 had level 10 strength or higher. The Red Eye leader was a level 10 martial artist at his peak point, someone very difficult to face. According to his route, he was going directly toward Lan Cheng's area. Lan Cheng's attention fixed on Zhao Lin, and his jaw dropped in surprise. He could not believe that the pirates were coming toward him. He could not help but clench his teeth tightly and feel furious, since in that direction was Lu Sheng's planet. At the same time, a powerful pirate ship was traveling through space. Inside the ship, in the area called natural space, there was a group of people sitting around a table eating calmly. With a serious gaze, the red-haired man picked up a glass of wine, began to stare at the others, and informed them that yesterday he had been told that the price of common slaves had dropped by 30%. Those ordinary humans they had captured were no longer worth keeping. Transporting them would make them lose money. He asked Toxie Scorpio to go and choose some who had good appearance. She could get rid of the rest as waste. The woman named Toxie Scorpio stood up, put her hand on her chest, and with a serious expression, nodded her head. The man began to observe the others carefully, and in a serious tone mentioned that lately the stellar police of the Myaxing sector had already been tracking them. Next to him was a man with an eye patch and another fat man who wore glasses. The man extended his hand and several planets appeared behind him. He placed his hand on the table, and while his eyes were shining with joy, with a smile he said that this was going to be their last operation, so each one could choose one. They were going to steal one last time and return home. The man who had a patch on his eye began to observe the planets with a serious gaze. While the fat man's eyes were shining with confidence, he began to point at the planet with his finger and with a smile said that he chose that star. The blue star appeared in front of the man who had a patch on his eye with a confident expression. He chose the blue star. He began to touch his chin and a smile spread across his face, since he remembered that it was blue star number 828462 according to him. It was a beautiful name which matched him. He decided to keep that star. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, Lu Sheng sat around the table inside the mysterious asteroid. Yang Yizhou, who had his eyes closed, took out the pieces to play. Lu Sheng's eyes began to shine with confusion and suspicion, as he didn't know how to play chess. Yang Yizhou began to show the pieces and with a kind smile said that it didn't matter if Lu Sheng didn't know how to play. He just had to try in order to learn how to play. He extended his hand toward Lu Sheng so he could take the pieces. Lu Sheng extended his hand and grabbed one of the black pieces. His attention was fixed on it and his eyes filled with confusion and fear. He didn't know what was happening. The space around him began to distort and everyone started to watch him in silence. Liu Sheng began to turn his head from side to side in confusion, not knowing what was happening. Lu Sheng's body began to emit a mysterious energy which started to mix with the air. His eyes began to shine with surprise. As he realized that the space had collapsed, it was more than a collapse, it was as if he had entered into a deeper world. With a serious gaze, Lu Sheng began to stare at the others in silence. Just then, whirlwinds made of fire began to appear in front of him, Lu Sheng's attention fixed on them. He could not believe that the chess pieces had turned into burning suns. Just then, a powerful phoenix made of fire appeared and began to roar. It began to look at our boy in silence. Not long after, the phoenix began to devour and a powerful burst of energy began to emerge from its body. Lu Sheng began to observe this and his eyes filled with seriousness. He realized that this beast was a divine beast, the three-legged Jinwu. Yang Yizhou began to show a joyful smile. When he turned toward our boy and could not help but feel somewhat surprised, he could not believe that Lu Sheng had been able to recognize his three-legged Jinwu beast. According to him, Lu Sheng had the merit to sit next to them. Upon hearing this, Lu Sheng's eyes filled with confusion. He began to stare at the Jinwu and with a curious gaze asked what kind of chess they were playing, while Wang Yi's eyes were shining with joy. With a smile he mentioned that this chess was called Dao chess. The solar domain full of Jinwu was his royal river, pointing directly to the level 15 Dao. Lu Sheng's eyes filled with surprise and fear. He was in shock to see that the Jinwu was level 15. He remembered that it was a level 11 beast. He did not know where that level 15 Dao came from. Wang Yi closed his eyes and started laughing out loud. According to him, one could not talk about ice with a summer insect. Lu Sheng began to imagine Wang Yi with his body releasing an intense energy. With a serious gaze, he revealed that his knowledge about the real river stopped at the moment when base 1359 had been destroyed 10,000 years in the future. But no one had said that his real river had already died after these 10,000 years of martial path. His eyes filled with confusion, since he understood that after receiving the level 12 inheritance from all of them, he had thought that all of them were pursuing the level 12 Dao. Lu Sheng began to imagine them floating in space. He knew that in reality, with the cultivation level they had not died along with the blue planet, but rather they had given way to a new world. With a confused gaze, he let out a sigh, since for him this was like when his high school classmates thought he was still in college. But the reality was that he was about to ascend to level 9. Just then, someone made their move and placed their piece on top of the chessboard. It was the piece began to shine intensely. With a smile, he revealed that this was his crystalline domain. Crystals appeared around his body. With a joyful gaze, he extended his hand and mentioned that he also wanted to ascend to level 15. But his domain was much more powerful than that supposed solar domain. Lu Sheng began to observe the crystals and his eyes filled with surprise and fear. With a furious expression, Wang He approached Duan Yefeng and asked how he dared to say that his crystalline domain was stronger than his solar domain. With a confident gaze, he revealed that his Tao had been praised by the Lord of the Tianlin domain, and it was incomparable in the whole universe. Duan Yefeng began to gaze toward the ground in silence, then, with a furious gaze, made it clear that he too had received admiration from the Lord of the Tianlin domain. In all the universe no one could surpass his Tao. With eyes shining with rage, Wang He asked if he wanted to compete, and mentioned that last time he had stolen the sweets he had hidden. With a furious expression, Duan Yefeng called him Wrinkle Face and said that he had sneaked in and drunk his tea. Their bodies began to release powerful energies which started to collide with each other. Both took their chess pieces, and with every breath, countless Jinwu and crystals shattered and died. Their power began to clash with each other. Lu Sheng, who was standing far away, began to observe this, realizing that this was a confrontation between level 15 Daos, a battle between mythical creatures and legendary beings. His eyes filled with fear, as the only thing he could do was stand there watching without being able to do anything. Yang Yizhou approached our boy, extended his hand and with a curious gaze asked if Lu Sheng was not going to try to do the same as them. Upon hearing this, Lu Sheng turned towards him and with a serious gaze said that he did not know how to do this. Lu Sheng closed his eyes and let out a sigh, even if he knew how to do it. He would not dare since his martial path, compared to theirs, was like that of a child playing at making clay figures. With a kind smile, Yang Yizhou mentioned that no one is born knowing. All the great masters had started as beginners. He asked our boy to try because he was sure that he was going to do well. Lu Sheng's eyes began to shine, and he started looking at his hands. He was confused since he didn't know how he should create his Tao and what the first step was. Lu Sheng clenched his fists and began to imagine a lake. His complete martial path Tao was capable of encompassing everything. But in reality it was a disordered mix, it had everything. But there was nothing representative. His eyes filled with disappointment since in general terms, he had nothing that could be shown and challenge others. Against an ordinary warrior his martial path was fine. But when facing these great warriors, he finally realized that he was a weakling. With a serious expression, Yang Yizhou called his attention and asked him not to belittle himself. He asked when Lu Sheng had first begun to delve into the martial path. With a confused gaze, Lu Sheng began to think without knowing what to say. He began to touch his chin and started to imagine himself sitting in the school gymnasium, and revealed that he had learned from his master the 24 forms of body training. At that moment, his eyes filled with surprise as he understood what he should do now. Lu Sheng couldn't help but smile as he realized that all creation began with imitation. If he didn't know what to do in the first step, and wasn't clear about what he wanted to do, then he could start by imitating what others did. With a gaze full of rage, Duan Yefeng and Wang Yi extended their hands and prepared to fight. They were fighting using all their power. The pieces fell like lightning and no one paid attention to what Lu Sheng was doing in a corner. With a joyful gaze, taking advantage that he was not looking, Lu Sheng took a small star from the edge of his stellar domain and began to examine it and study it carefully. Feeling this, with an angry expression, Wang Yi's attention focused on our boy. Seeing this, Lu Sheng hid the small fire star behind his back, and with a nervous expression began to whistle, saying that he had done nothing. Wang Yi did not pay much attention and continued attacking. Seeing this, a confident smile spread across Lu Sheng's face. He began to examine it and his eyes started to shine with excitement. He noticed how the stars were composed. He felt that his understanding and perception of the immortal star technique had increased countless times. Lu Sheng caught the star and crushed it. With a smile, he thought that if he returned now to reality, his immortal star body was going to experience a new transformation. But for now he could not worry about this since he had to keep moving forward. His hands began to tremble and his eyes filled with fear. He tried again and again in the void, without knowing how much time passed, until finally the small star finally became smaller and was born. Its light was so tiny that it did not even reach 1% of the smallest star in Wang Yi's solar domain. Lu Sheng's eyes began to shine with joy as this was his first creation, a true star. He couldn't help but smile since he couldn't believe he had achieved it. Yang Yizhou began to stroke his beard and couldn't help but smile, praising Lu Sheng for having created his first star. Lu Sheng began to sweat and with a grateful gaze thanked the old man for the advice. Just then, Lu Sheng's eyes filled with surprise and joy. He realized who this guy was. Upon hearing this, Yang Yizhou's eyes began to shine with malice, and with a smile he asked what Lu Sheng meant by that. With a curious gaze, he started looking at Lu Sheng and asked who did he think he was. With a nervous expression, Lu Sheng began to ponder, and while his eyes were shining with seriousness, he said that with just a few words, he had revealed the crucial point. He was powerful like an abyss but a deep calmness. He knew that this guy was the Lord of Tianlin Domain. Upon hearing this, Yang Yizhou closed his eyes and started showing a smile. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, Yang Yizhou closed his eyes and with a pleasant smile began to touch his chin with his finger, and revealed that Lu Sheng had only guessed half. Upon hearing this, Lu Sheng's attention fixed on him and his mind filled with surprise. He began to ponder in silence. Lu Sheng began to stare at him intently with a serious gaze as he realized that Yang Yizhou, just like his creation, the natural breathing method, emanated an enigmatic and difficult to decipher sensation. Lu Sheng was unable to understand this, so he decided not to think about it anymore and focus on the opportunity before him. Lu Sheng took out the small star again and focused, causing martial fire to begin emerging from it. His eyes began to shine with determination, since he knew better than anyone that it would be foolish not to take advantage of this opportunity. After having created the first star and acquired the necessary experience, the process of forming the second had become much easier. Liu Shang began to imbue his own martial energy into the star and martial fire began to gather around it. Lu Shang soon formed the third star. This time, it turned out even more perfect. With an intense glow, already reaching 1/10 of the size of Wang Yi's smallest solar domain star. Lu Shang began observing the star closely and his eyes started shining with joy, making a proud smile appear on his face. The more he mastered the process, the deeper became his understanding of stellar structure. It was a novel and indescribable experience since in reality it was impossible to split a star in half for thorough study. Lu Shang closed his eyes and bright magic circles began to appear behind him. Now he could feel it clearly. His understanding of the star Tao was ascending at a dizzying speed, as if he were riding a rocket. The star network that he had built before now seemed terribly immature to him. Not long after, the sky was filled with fire stars. Star after star were born from Lu Shang's hands. Our boy extended his hand and a perfect star appeared. Lu Shang's attention fixed on it and his eyes filled with surprise and seriousness. Finally, a dazzling star manifested in all its perfection. It surpassed all those he had created before, even reaching the standard level of Wang Yi's solar domain. And then, it began to emit signs of life. The surface of the star began to break like the shell of an egg, and several seconds later, a majestic phoenix of fire emerged from inside the star and began to flap its wings. The phoenix approached the star and began to stare at it silently, creating tension. Then it started flapping its wings again and a dazzling light began to emerge from its body. Lu Shang's attention was fixed on it. He was in shock as he couldn't believe that a phoenix had been born. The creature descended gently and sat on Lu Shang's shoulder. Then it approached our boy's face and with a calm expression began to emit chirps. Lu Shang's eyes were filled with surprise and confusion since he didn't know what was happening. Lu Shang made the phoenix sit in his arms, and while his eyes were shining with joy, with a smile he asked Yang Yizhou to look at the creature. The phoenix spread its wings and began to roar. Yang Yishu could not help but smile. With a joyful gaze, he asked Lu Shang if the martial path was much more interesting than he had imagined. Lu Shang made the phoenix sit on his shoulder again and with a happy expression nodded his head. Lu Shang began to observe the phoenix. His eyes expanded with joy and a smile spread across his face. He was about to call Yang Yishu a master. Until now our boy had never had someone who would guide him with such determination. He had always advanced alone, exploring blindly. In difficult moments, there was no one to vent to, and in moments of joy, he had no one to share it with. Now Yang Yishu gave a feeling of being a benevolent master. With a smile, Yang Yishu asked our boy to try doing the same again. Upon hearing his voice, Lu Shang came out of his thoughts. Not far from him was a small star from Duan Naifeng's crystalline domain, surrounded by a powerful aura. Lu Shang's attention was fixed on it, and his mind filled with surprise, he began to think silently. The sky was full of stars from Duan Naifeng's domain, while his eyes were shining with confidence. With a smile, he asked Lu Shang to try since there was no reason to be afraid. Upon hearing this, Lu Shang couldn't help but feel somewhat confused. With a calm expression, Lu Shang extended his hand toward the star and began to imbue his energy in it. Lu Shang managed to control the star. He began to observe it carefully and his eyes widened with curiosity. His eyes filled with seriousness and fear. More or less, he had already understood the relationship between these three. Wang Qian Duan Yaifeng had a similar status, while Yang Yishu was someone higher. He remembered that Yang Yishu had said that he had only guessed half of it. But Lu Shang did not know what the other half of the mystery was. While Lu Shang was focused, Yang Yishu couldn't help but smile and feel proud. Our boy was certain that Yang Yishu had a very close connection with the Tianglin star domain. He was the one who truly had a great background, while Wang Qian Duan Yafeng seemed rather to have climbed up step by step from below. Otherwise, Lu Shang couldn't believe this, since according to him there was no way that 3 level 15 or higher geniuses could be born on a small planet at the same time. And if there were a great master backing them, then everything would make sense. Lu Shang began to concentrate and the star started to become smaller and shine. Our boy's eyes began to shine seriously, because he knew that the truth was right in front of his eyes. He didn't need to rack his brain trying to guess. He just had to wait for them to reveal the truth step by step. At the same time, in the realm of the Lion of the Blue Star it was afternoon, and near a skyscraper there was a park where a boy was playing with his father. With a gaze full of determination, the boy clenched his fist and began to practice martial arts. The father began to encourage his son and with a smile asked Albert to do it once more. That success was calling him. Albert focused and a wave of martial energy shot out from his palm. Seeing this, his eyes filled with joy and a smile appeared on his face. He couldn't believe he had achieved it. Not long after, Albert fell exhausted to the ground and began gasping heavily, telling his father that he was very tired. The father helped his son stand up by resting his son's shoulder on his own shoulder. With a confident gaze, he asked his son to get up since he couldn't stay lying on the ground right after training. The father began to look his son in the eyes, and with a confident smile revealed that he also felt a great improvement when practicing these movements. With a serious and curious expression, Albert asked his father if it was true that these movements came from the realm of the dragon. Upon hearing this, the father's eyes filled with confusion and surprise. With an angry expression, he began to imagine a powerful martial warrior from the army, and revealed that these movements were called body refinement technique of the god of war. They had been created by the god of war from the realm of the dragon, and in that place, the army was already beginning to implement them widely, completely replacing the old body refinement technique. Upon hearing this, Albert's eyes began to shine with admiration. He clenched his fist and asked if all the warriors of the dragon realm could learn the entire series of movements for free. With a calm expression, the father nodded and made it clear that they, in the lion realm, could only learn them by paying. And it wasn't even the complete series. Currently, the dragon realm had only opened the sale of some movements to outsiders. With eyes shining with admiration, Albert approached his father and suggested the idea of emigrating to the dragon realm and acquiring its nationality, since in this way they could learn the entire body refinement technique for free. The father began to gaze toward the ground in silence. He explained to his son that this was a good idea, since the existence of the body refinement technique of the god of war was undoubtedly going to make the realm of the dragon become the strongest nation in the world in the future. And when that happened, obtaining nationality from the realm of the dragon was going to be complicated. He knew that now was a good opportunity to emigrate. Albert clenched his fists and with a joyful gaze revealed to his father that his dream was simple. He wanted to become a powerful martial artist since only the strong had the right to speak. Just then, Albert's eyes filled with fear and his attention fixed on the sky. With a confused gaze, he asked his father to look at the sky. Upon hearing this, his father raised his head, and upon seeing what was in the sky, his eyes filled with fear and his jaw dropped in shock. At that moment, several small alien ships appeared in the sky and a giant ship. Albert and his father were paralyzed with fear. Albert grabbed his father's arm and his eyes began to shine with surprise upon seeing a spaceship. He thought it was true that there were extraterrestrials in this world. He told his father that science fiction movies were real. The father began to observe the spaceships carefully and his eyes widened with terror since he knew that this feeling was not normal. Just then, the ships began to shine. Not long after, the spaceships fired powerful lasers at the ground, creating small explosions. A few minutes ago it was night and in Iji's starfighter. The man who had an eye patch communicated with the fat man, and with a smile asked if he wanted to play a little game. The fat man who was eating and drinking soda became curious and asked Iji what he was planning. Iji closed his eyes and with a confident expression, said that whoever this time was faster and obtained more rewards could keep 10% of the final earnings of the other two. The long-haired man crossed his arms and mentioned that this time the reward was big. With what each one could get, they could buy a low-level garden planet. The fat man began to ponder in silence, then took a sip of soda and said that he also wanted to play. With a serious gaze, the long-haired man also said that he wanted to play. Iji couldn't help but smile and with a serious expression made it clear that if anyone backed out, he was going to send the audio recording to the boss. The fat guy started wiping food remains with a napkin and with a smile asked Iji not to regret it later. Iji started touching his chin and a smile spread across his face since according to him the blue star was beautiful. His spaceship was flying near the planet. His attention fixed on it and he couldn't help but feel pity for the miserable beings of this inferior civilization. His eyes began to shine with evil. He stuck out his tongue and asked everyone to prepare themselves for the arrival of the great Lord Iji. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, it was daytime and people were peacefully enjoying their lives as usual. Some were going shopping and others were going to the park with their children. This peace did not last long since Saji's spaceship began to fire laser beams at the cities. The technology was so advanced that large explosions were created in the area, which began to destroy everything in their path. The cities were in flames and everything was chaos. With faces full of fear, people began to flee from their homes in desperation. No one knew what was happening. The fire began to devastate everything. From buildings to the ground, some were lucky enough to escape in time and others not. In the midst of the chaos, a boy was trapped and could not flee. The man wearing a night helmet was in shock and his jaw dropped in fear since he did not know what was happening. With his face full of sweat and eyes of terror, the other man realized that humanity was being attacked. With clothes full of blood, a man in brown stepped forward and with an expression full of determination suggested evacuating all civilians. Upon hearing this, the attention of the other man focused on him, and he could not help but feel somewhat confused. Iji's spaceship attacked again, and several powerful lasers struck the already destroyed buildings of the city. With the city in flames and on the verge of collapse, a screen appeared in the middle of the city. With a smile, Iji addressed all the inhabitants of the planet and introduced himself as Lord Iji. His eyes began to shine with evil and an arrogant smile spread across his face. He revealed that from now on they were all going to be his slaves. The attention of all the city's inhabitants was fixed on the screen, and their eyes widened in surprise and fear, leaving them in shock. Among them was also the Marshal Saint Marshal Cumberland. he raised his head and began to look attentively at the spaceships. His eyes began to shine with fear and despair since he remembered hearing the guide say that IG was part of a group of stellar pirates. They were terrorists of the cosmos. Upon hearing this, the other martial saints were paralyzed with fear, and their jaws dropped in shock. They could not believe that this was true. At the same time, with eyes full of exhaustion, Lu Sheng put his hands together and began to gaze toward the ground in silence. Lu Sheng concentrated and a powerful star began to form in his hands. Several seconds later, a small green dragon was born inside the star. Noticing this, Lu Sheng's eyes began to shine with joy and a smile spread across his face. He couldn't believe that a crystal dragon had appeared. He had created life, realizing that this was like a game of the creators. Yang Yishu, who was standing behind with his eyes closed, began to stroke his beard and couldn't help but smile. His attention was fixed on Lu Sheng, and with a smile he mentioned that this could also be considered as part of the training. At the same time, in the sky, Wang He and Du and Yefeng were fighting with their bodies surrounded by powerful martial energies. Lu Sheng extended his hand and with a curious gaze said that he could feel that the comprehension of the demand by Wang He and Du and Yefeng had reached an unprecedented height. Yang Yishu began to stroke his beard and did not say a single word. Although there was much that Lu Sheng could not understand for now, after all, the gap between them was too great. Yang Yishu opened his eyes and began to gaze at Lu Sheng. With a serene expression he explained that although Lu Sheng could not understand it, everything had been subtly imprinted in his body through the game of creation. And when the time came, naturally he would know how to use it. Lu Sheng's eyes widened in confusion. He began to touch his head and felt confused since according to him Yang Yizhuo was quite enigmatic. Just then, Lu Sheng began to feel a strange fluctuation of energy and with a curious gaze he turned around. A smile spread across Yang Yizhuo's face when he realized that old Wang had used the technique. Wang He closed his eyes and concentrated, causing a powerful golden martial energy to emerge from his body. Then, he extended his hands and a giant star made of fire appeared behind him. He asked Duang Yefeng to prepare himself to receive this attack. Upon seeing this, Lu Sheng's eyes widened in surprise and fear, causing his jaw to drop. This was a star formed by the power of the 3 feet of gold. For our boy it was difficult to imagine what direction its evolution would take. He didn't know if the star would become a supernova, a neutron star or a black hole. Duang Yefeng focused and several stars made of crystal began to float around him. He was furious upon seeing that Wang He was the one who wanted to launch this technique first. He extended his hands and the stars he had summoned broke apart and their energy began to gather and spin around him. He decided not to stand idly by and see who was stronger. The energy began to gather and form a powerful star. At the same time, Wang Yi's star was also becoming stronger and stronger. Not long after, the stars collided with each other and a powerful energy shot out in all directions. Lu Sheng clenched his teeth and put his arms in front of his head. He did not know if they had completely given up their bodies and fused with cosmic energy to achieve divine immortality. Our boy's attention was fixed on them, and his eyes began to shine with excitement, and he couldn't help but smile. For him this was incredible. This was a clash between 2 elite divine domains, and now many new perceptions and ideas had also arisen in his mind. The clash of the stars began to destroy everything nearby. With a curious gaze, Lu Sheng watched fascinated, immersed in an indescribable state, with all his attention focused on the divine battle unfolding before him. However, his hands did not stop creating one star after another, one crystal planet after another, faster and faster, more precise and more skillful. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of stars appeared around Lu Sheng, causing a smile to spread across his face. While the stars were releasing energy, Lu Sheng began to gaze toward the ground. Without realizing it, the crystal planets and stars created by Lu Sheng began to match and number those from the battle between the 2 gods. This vast stellar domain had become the 3rd divine domain in this void of cosmic boards. Lu Sheng extended his hands and began to control the stars. Yang Yizhuo began to observe our boy with a proud expression and could not help but with eyes shining with joy, he began to ponder in silence. At the same time, in the country of Leon, Yuji continued attacking the cities amid the panic. The humans who remained alive began to flee in panic. with a gaze full of fear. The man wearing a white shirt turned around and asked everyone to run quickly. Near some rubble there was a wounded woman hugging her little daughter who was crying in fear. Just then, a burst of energy began to descend from the sky towards them. Cumberland clenched his fists and with a serious expression, jumped and began to move toward them. He was not going to let anyone die before his eyes. Using his power, Cumberland landed in front of them and created an energy shield, causing the burst to impact against the shield. The attack was powerful since Cumberland lost part of his clothing. With his fist clenched, he began to show an expression full of determination. People soon realized that he was the great warrior Cumberland. People did not take long to realize that he was the great warrior Cumberland. With a smile, one of the men raised his fist in the sky and began to cheer for Cumberland. The eyes of the other man began to shine with hope since, according to him, being with Cumberland they were going to be safe. They believed that without hesitation he was going to face the aliens and save the blue planet. With a serious gaze, Cumberland made it clear that the power of this technology was he wouldn't even dare receive it head-on. Although it wasn't fast, it was easy to dodge it. He knew those terrorists wouldn't dare appear. Cumberland realized that if E.G. only limited himself to using the spaceship to attack, that showed he was not very strong. With an expression full of determination, he turned his head and asked everyone to be careful with the lasers and mentioned that if they worked together to destroy the spaceship, they could kill A.G. The warriors who were behind him began to watch him and nodded their heads. With eyes shining with rage, Cumberland began staring at the spaceship and summoned his sword. A powerful martial energy began to manifest in the form of a sword in his hand. Without wasting another second, Cumberland gathered momentum and began to advance toward the spaceship. As Cumberland was slowly flying toward the ship, a confident smile appeared on the faces of the people. They knew this was the supreme technique of the great Lord Cumberland, and now there was nothing to worry about. They clenched their fists and began to cheer him on. Not long after, Cumberland reached E.G.'s spaceship and attacked with his sword. His sword struck against a shield that surrounded the ship. Upon seeing this, Cumberland's eyes filled with confusion and curiosity. He clenched his teeth as he didn't know what was happening. Cumberland stopped attacking and panicked upon realizing that he couldn't break through the protective shield since his martial strength could not stand up to this technology. The face of the holy marshal was covered in sweat, and his eyes began to shine with desperation. He grabbed the sword tightly and could not help but wonder what to do now. A screen appeared next to him. With a smile, E.G. mocked Cumberland for not having the strength to break a simple protective shield. Upon hearing this, Cumberland turned toward the screen and was shocked. With a serious gaze, he began to look at E.G. and mentioned that he couldn't believe that advanced civilizations only knew how to abuse technology to intimidate others, while hiding like turtles inside their ship's shields. Upon hearing this, E.G.'s eyes filled with confusion. Then an arrogant smile spread across his face as he asked if Cumberland wanted him to get out of the spaceship. With his face full of sweat and with a determined expression, Cumberland began to imbue mana into his sword and mocked E.G., provoking him to come out of the ship. If this provocation could manage to make him come out, then perhaps there would be a chance to resolve this crisis. Not long after, E.G. decided to please Cumberland's wish and the door of the ship opened. E.G. came out of the ship and upon seeing this, Cumberland's eyes began to shine with joy. He couldn't believe that his plan had worked. In the blink of an eye, E.G. appeared behind Cumberland and grabbed him by the head, and while his body was releasing an intense energy, with a smile he asked Cumberland to try to guess what was the height of his divine manifestation. With a confused gaze, Cumberland turned his head, realizing that this guy was very fast. E.G.'s martial manifestation began to grow larger, and he started to show an arrogant smile. His martial manifestation grew up to 8,000 meters and his energy transformed into a powerful demonic spirit. Cumberland panicked when he realized that his real strength was much greater than that of the spaceship. He knew that now humanity had no salvation. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part,